In 1922, the biggest novel in America was not Ulysses. It was not Siddhartha. It was not one of the books that still gets handed around in classrooms today. It was a Western called The Covered Wagon by Emerson Hough. It was the #1 bestseller of the year. It sold in enormous numbers. Hollywood turned it into a silent epic, watched by millions. For a while, it seemed to belong permanently to the American imagination. Ox teams, prairie dust, river crossings, whole families pushing west because the future had promised them something and refused to say whether it would keep its word. And then, within a generation, it was almost gone. By 1950, you could ask a room of educated readers about The Covered Wagon, and most of them would look back at you blankly. A book that had once seemed impossible to avoid had become a footnote. Not because everyone agreed it was bad, not because nobody had loved it, but because books do not vanish only when they fail. Sometimes they vanish after they win. That is the secret door Haberdash Books was built to open. We like to imagine literature as a kind of court of justice. The great books survive. The weak books fade. Time, supposedly, is the final critic. But time is not a critic. Time is a weather system. It floods some shelves and dries out others. It lets one writer become immortal and lets another, equally strange and brilliant, disappear under dust. Books vanish for very practical reasons. Copyright tangles keep editions locked away. Publishers collapse. Heirs lose interest. Translations go out of print. A language falls outside the English world's line of sight. A book becomes politically inconvenient. A war changes the shape of taste. A film adaptation replaces the novel in memory. A famous rival takes up all the oxygen in the room. And sometimes, a book disappears because it told the truth too plainly. In 1860, Multatuli published Max Havelaar, a novel that exposed the Dutch colonial system in Java with such force that the authorities could not refute it. He had seen the machinery from inside. He knew the names, the methods, the evasions. The book compared Dutch rule in the Indies to slavery, and made an empire look directly at its own reflection. Naturally, that is not the kind of book empires help keep alive. In Italy, Federico Tozzi wrote with the psychological violence of Dostoevsky and the spiritual pressure of Kafka, before Kafka had fully entered the conversation. Then he died in 1920, just before the work that should have secured his reputation could properly reach the world. His masterpiece, Three Crosses, survived, but the author did not live long enough to defend it, explain it, tour it, or become a legend around it. And in Finland, Juhani Aho became one of the great founders of modern Finnish literature. But he wrote in Finnish. For English readers, that alone can be enough to turn a masterpiece into a sealed room. His novel The Railway is funny, tender, and quietly devastating. A story about ordinary people encountering modernity for the first time. In another language, in another market, it might have become a permanent classic. Instead, for most English listeners, it never even arrived. That is the pattern. Not failure. Disappearance. Haberdash Books exists because the lost library is much larger than most people realize. Every week, we go looking for a book that slipped through the floorboards of history. A novel that once sold in huge numbers. A writer who won prizes and then vanished from memory. A work that changed politics, shaped a national literature, shocked a public, or simply described ordinary life with such clarity that it still feels alive a century later. Then we bring it back. If the book already exists in English and is in the public domain, we prepare a clean edition. If it needs translation, we create a fresh modern English version. We produce an audiobook, build a readable ebook, create the cover, and make the first chapter available here as a literary discovery show. The backstory first, then the opening of the book itself. Because a forgotten classic should not require a library card, a specialist degree, and 6 hours of archival detective work just to find out whether it is worth reading. It should be placed in your hands. The goal is simple. We are rebuilding the lost library, one book at a time. Not the official canon. Not the same 25 books everyone already knows. The other shelf. The strange shelf. The shelf of scandal novels, disappeared Nobel winners, provincial masterpieces, colonial indictments, forgotten bestsellers, and authors who were once household names before the century turned its face away. Some of these books are famous in their own countries and almost unknown in English. Some were bestsellers that no one bothered to rescue. Some were suppressed. Some were simply unlucky. But the astonishing thing is how often they still work. You open them expecting a museum piece, and instead you find a living nerve. That is why we created the Lost Library Pass. If you want the books we uncover, you can have them. Email haberdashbooks@yahoo.com with the words Lost Library Pass in the subject line, or visit haberdashbooks.com, and we will send you access to the audiobooks we have made so far. Free. Yours to keep. No subscription fee. No locked app. No trick hiding in the fine print. These are public domain works. The whole point is that they should circulate again. If one of these books finds the right reader, the library grows stronger. So take them. Listen while you cook, commute, walk, work, or lie awake at night, wondering why the world is stranger than the syllabus admitted. And if you know someone who loves books with a secret history, send them here too. Now let me show you what one of these rediscoveries sounds like. This is from The Railway, by Juhani Aho. The story of a Finnish farmer, Matti, trying to understand the impossible new thing that has arrived in his world. Matti was rather absent-minded while harnessing his horse. He didn't remember to put the bridle in the horse's mouth until he crossed the yard and noticed his mistake in front of the kitchen. The mare wasn't in a hurry either, strolling across the yard and even down the slope onto the ice. But Matti grew impatient with such impertinence. "Hey mare, what are you doing there? Giddy up!" The mare waited for better coaxing. She pretended not to hear, dragging her feet as if pulling a water barrel. Come on, don't you dare!" Matti yanked the reins, first on the right, then on the left, and the mare understood that he meant business now. Before really breaking into a run, she flicked her tail twice, as was her custom. Then she leaped into a trot, and the sleigh followed behind her down the slope. A magpie sat on the fence, jumped onto the tip of a post, and let out a cheeky laugh. "Well, now isn't it having a grand time, laughing at nothing?" Matti muttered, urging his mare into a better trot. "Don't you understand? Even the magpies laugh at you." The mare trotted briskly over the ice. The path creaked under the sleigh's runners, the sled rattled, and Matti slumped in the middle of it with his coat collar up. The short day was already dimming. Matti drove along the shortcut and pondered. He thought about what he had discussed with the pastor and his wife. So the railway was at Lapinlahti church? Who would have believed it, without hearing it from them? And strange it was that he had not heard of it before. It must have just arrived there. Would there still be water enough for steam, now that it was climbing onto land? It must look peculiar. It had already been strange enough when it stuttered along the water. Should he go see it? Had anyone else gone besides the pastor and his wife? The shortcut bent around the tip of the peninsula, and then led along the oval lake to the shore, by the Huttula house. The closer they got to land, the more the mare slowed down. Matti had not hurried her for a long time, and the mare thought she could walk by now. Running on her hind legs, though the front ones were already walking. Then even the hind legs started walking, and the sleigh rose as if sighing with relief. Ka-ka-ka! The mare had to start trotting with her front legs again, though the hind legs were still walking. But when Matti pulled the reins, first the right, then the left, the hind legs had to join in the rhythm. Matti always used to water his horse at Winter Bay, from the waterhole near the Huttula house. Out of old habit, the mare headed there now. Ka-ka-ka! Matti would not have remembered, but the mare insisted. "Well, go on then," Matti said, giving the mare free rein. At the hole, a waterman from the Huttula house was filling a pail. "Where's Matti driving from?" the waterman asked. "From the church, the parsonage last," Matti replied, and began knocking the snow off his mare's hooves. "Anything new? Nothing special? Is the master home?" "He's not home. Left for Lapinlahti this morning. Probably went to check out the railway. He must have seen it before. More likely off to fetch goods." "Do the master's deals go well?" "I suppose they do. I don't know. He seems to be getting fatter at least." "Has Vil been to see the railway?" "Me? I was actually helping build it." Really? "Indeed. For 1.5 years, and soon I'll be going again." "What was the work like?" "It was like digging a ditch." But Matti did not believe it. He bit his lip, and stayed silent. He knew something too. He would not be taken for a fool. He knew enough about railways and such to know it was not just ditch digging. Vil might know how to dig a ditch, but building a railway? He could not do that without being a blacksmith. That is the quiet beauty of the railway. The drama is not a battle, or a murder, or a king losing his crown. It is a person trying to make room in his mind for the future. And the future, in Aho's hands, is both comic and frightening. Every week, Haberdash Books opens another door like this: a forgotten bestseller, a vanished national classic, a scandalous book that embarrassed the powerful, a writer who should be read and somehow is not. If that sounds like the kind of library you want to wander through, subscribe. The next book is already waiting, and if you want the audiobooks themselves, claim your Lost Library Pass. Email haberdashbooks@yahoo.com with Lost Library Pass in the subject, or visit haberdashbooks.com. The books are free. The downloads are yours to keep. The only thing we ask is that, if one of them finds you at the right moment, you pass the door along to someone else. The library is being rebuilt, one forgotten masterpiece at a time.